It can't get any worse. I'm already a suspect driving between states with a naked girl in the back seat. So I would say about an hour later, I passed Boston, I think, and I got on this parkway, and I started driving through the woods. And for 30 to 45 minutes, I was just driving in the woods on a small parkway with no building, no businesses, no gas station, no traffic. I hadn't seen a car for the last 30 minutes, and I was just driving in the darkness. So as I kept driving towards my destination, I was just listening to some Joe Rogan podcast and some stories online. But then 15 miles before I reached my destination, my cell phone lost service. So no more podcasts, no YouTube, no Spotify, nothing works. But my GPS was still set for the address, so I didn't have to worry because I had Waze on. But I also understood that I wouldn't get paid for the last 15 miles of me driving, because if your cell phone doesn't report anything, there's no way they can pay you for a distance that your cell phone didn't register. But I didn't worry about 15 miles because, hey, I just drove a few light years to get there. So I would just complete the job and go home because I knew it was a loss from the beginning. So I kept driving and finally reached my destination at 151 Main Street in Covington, Massachusetts. And there was nothing there. There was no rehab center. No building, there was nothing. I was still in the woods on that small parkway. There was nothing around. The only building I could see was some kind of abandoned fire station. But I also knew that if I turned around and drove back 15 miles, I would get service. So I could call this witch and ask her what the hell was wrong with her. So I decided to take a chance. I made a U-turn and started driving the opposite direction. After a few minutes of driving back, after a few minutes of driving the opposite direction, I remembered that the girl also had a cell phone. So I decided to take it, turn it on, and see if I could call the client or maybe contact the police and see if they could help me find a way out of this. But she had his password, and so after about 5 minutes of driving back, I remembered that the passenger also had a cell phone. So I took it and turned it on. And surprisingly, she had service. She had AT&T. I used T-Mobile, but she had AT&T over there. So she had service, but she had a password. And I asked her for the password. She was still too intoxicated to give. So I decided to call 911 with the option on the screen. So a lady picked up and explained to her what the situation was. And she didn't seem like she wanted to deal with it. She just transferred me to some officer, like a lieutenant or a captain, I'm not sure. And I explained the same thing to him. I was like, well, I picked up somebody from Brooklyn and I started driving towards this rehab center. But apparently it doesn't exist. I have no idea how to make it back. And I'm barely gonna make it with the gas that I have. And so the first thing the officer said was, how the hell did you end up there? I'm like, I don't know. They just gave me an address and I followed it. I never been here before. He said, this is weird. This is really weird because I grew up in Massachusetts. I've never been to that place. I don't even know anyone who went to that place. This is nowhere. And I was like, officer, I didn't call you for you to tell me that I'm nowhere. I know that. I'm trying to get out of here. And he said, well, all I can do is send a unit, but it's going to take 30 to 40 minutes for a unit to arrive. So I'm not sure if you're willing to wait, or you can keep driving that same direction because there are truck service areas down the road. So you'll probably be able to refuel your car and maybe borrow a cell phone and call your clients. I said, all right, I'll take the second option because I'm not interested in stopping here in the woods and wait for anybody at 1 a.m. in the morning because I don't know what's in the woods. They probably got bears, wolves, and some coyotes in there. I'm not trying to take any chance. So I'm going to keep driving. I hung up and kept driving. But then I would say about 3 to 4 miles later, I noticed the car behind me. It was a Ford Explorer, a white Ford Explorer. So I decided to slow down because it was so dark. I didn't want to have to anticipate the next turn. So I would rather follow another car. So I said, okay, let me slow down. This car will pass me and I will just follow them until I take my next turn. But oddly, the more I slowed down, the more this car slowed down. And I'm like, I'm doing 30 now, and this guy is still behind me, so he's following me now, that's for sure. And that's when my heart started racing, because to me it was probably the boyfriend, the Mr. One and Two More Things guy, because I didn't know where he was. It was probably in Massachusetts. So at this point, I tried to analyze the situation. I don't have enough gas. My car is not fast enough. And this guy is behind me. And I have no way of contacting anyone to ask for help. I can't. This girl's behind me. She can't help me. She can't even help herself. One thing that I knew for sure was that there was no getting out of this. So I guess I was too aggravated to be concerned for my safety anymore. Or maybe I just accepted the situation. So I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to pull over, and whatever happens to me, let it happen. So I pull over, and of course the car pulls over right behind me. I had one plan, and it was simple. I was going to watch this car, and whoever was going to step out of it, I would wait until they get close to my car, and then I would take off. Especially if they had anything in their hands. And I wouldn't care if they had something that looked like a gun or pencil. I would just take off. And of course, somebody stepped out of the car. It was a 65 to 70-year-old man. And he started walking towards my car. And my window was rolled down. So I yelled at him out the window. I said, "Stop. What do you want from me?" So the man stopped. And then he said, "Patrick." I'm like, "What?" And then he said it again. He said, Patrick, it's you, right?" I'm like, how is it possible? This is crazy. Like, how come this man knows where I am and knows my name in the middle of nowhere in Massachusetts? Because I don't know anybody in Massachusetts. I don't even know people in New York City. So how come this guy knew exactly where I was and followed me and then called me by name? He said, "Well, the client called me and she told me that she saw you on her cell phone driving around in the woods, and she got concerned and she called me and asked me to find you." I was like, "Who are you?" He said, "Well, I work at the rehab center." I said, "What rehab center? This place doesn't exist. I've been there, 151 Main Street." He said, "Well, it's an estate. So that address doesn't take you to a building. You have to get on a private road and drive for 5 to 10 minutes before you get to the physical address." And I'm like, why the hell didn't the client tell me that in the beginning? She sent me a very long message explaining to me why she needed me to take somebody to a rehab center. But she didn't give me the most important information, which was private roads don't show on the GPS. So you need to make a right here or a left here or something. She didn't say any of that. So at this point, I said to myself, well, if this guy wanted to do something to me, he would have done it already. So I got out of the car. I said, "Okay, you can have her now. She already destroyed my back seat. So what can I do? I'll just drive home." So the man was on the phone with the lady. So the man was on the phone with the client. So he gave me the phone for me to speak to her. And that's when I told her, I said, "Man, what you just did was stupid, because you don't ask a stranger to take a young girl to a rehab center hundreds of miles away. This is just too dangerous. And even if you don't want to sit in the car with me, at least come out and make sure that she gets into the right car and make sure that you see what I look like. Because I can't even recognize myself on that bad picture on my profile. So you need to make sure that she's in good hands. You don't just throw her out of the building and you don't just throw her out of the building and hope for the best. It's just not working like that." So I gave him the phone back. He gave me some stuff to clean up a little bit, which didn't really help because urine just sinks in. And I drove back home to New Jersey, where I live. I think I got home on Sunday morning at 8:30 or 9 a.m. It was just bad all the way around because the car was just in bad shape. I had to beg the detail shop owner to open on Sunday just to clean my car, and it took hours because they had to put chemicals in there. They removed the fabric and everything to do the job, and it was a bad deal and a bad experience for me. I tried to forget about this whole thing because it was such a traumatizing experience. I didn't want to think about it. But then 2 days later, I started wondering about maybe them using me to traffic somebody across states. So I got really concerned, so I went back online and I started researching the area. And when you Google it, it's just empty. It's just trees everywhere. But then I finally found the rehab center. It's called Swift River. I still don't know how to feel about the whole situation because she probably, via her drug use, burned all of her bridges with her friends and family. But I don't think it was the right thing for them to just toss her out to some stranger, hoping that everything would go well from the building to the rehab center hundreds of miles away. I haven't had an opportunity to speak to her again, and I don't even think it's going to happen anymore. But I hope that if she remembers what happened to her, or if somebody tells her what happened, she would probably think twice the next time she thinks about doing any drugs.